I always thought that when you closed the front door at night, the world stayed outside. I thought the walls of our home were a sanctuary where my secrets were safe and my vulnerabilities were honored. I didn't realize that my wife, Chloe, saw our private life as content, a currency she could spend to buy laughter, sympathy, and validation from anyone who would listen. I didn't know that while I was sleeping, my dignity was being auctioned off one lunch break at a time. I work as a forensic accountant. My entire professional life is built on the foundation of confidentiality. I handle sensitive data, hidden assets, and the kind of financial secrets that can ruin lives. I understand the weight of a secret. I understand that once information is out in the world, you can never truly claw it back. I brought that same sense of discretion into my marriage, believing that intimacy was a sacred circle that only two people were allowed to enter. When I married Chloe, I admired her social energy. She was bubbly, outgoing, and seemed to have 1,000 friends. She was the life of every party, while I was the quiet observer. I thought we balanced each other out. I thought her openness was a sign of a healthy, communicative soul. I didn't realize that for Chloe, there was no boundary between private and public. To her, if a story wasn't shared, it didn't happen. The oversharing started small, the kind of things you brush off because you don't want to seem like a killjoy. We'd be at dinner with another couple, and Chloe would casually mention a minor argument we had about the laundry. "Oh, you think Mike is bad?" She'd laugh, waving a hand at me. Leo here spent 20 minutes trying to figure out the delicate cycle. He's a genius with a spreadsheet, but put him in front of a washing machine and he turns into a toddler. I'd force a smile, feeling a tiny prick of annoyance. It was a silly story, but it felt unnecessary. Why did our friends need to know about my domestic incompetence? But Chloe's laugh was so infectious, and the other couple was chuckling, so I let it slide. I told myself it was just relatable couple humor. But as the years went by, the relatability started to feel like a betrayal. The stories became more personal, the details more intimate. Chloe started a blog and a social media presence focused on real marriage. On the surface, it looked empowering. She was destigmatizing the struggles of long-term relationships. But in reality, she was using my life as raw material for her engagement metrics. I'd scroll through her feed and see photos of me sleeping, with captions about my snoring. I'd see posts about our financial journey that went into uncomfortable detail about a bad investment I had made 3 years ago, a failure that had cost me a lot of sleep and self-esteem. "Chloe, did you have to post about the crypto loss?" I asked her one evening, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. That was a really difficult time for me. I'm still embarrassed by it. She didn't even look away from her screen. "Leo, don't be so sensitive. People love the honesty. They're commenting about how much they appreciate seeing a successful man make mistakes. It makes you human. It's good for my brand to show the messy parts." "But it's my mess," I said. "It's my failure. I didn't give you permission to broadcast it to 5,000 strangers." "We're a team, Leo," she snapped, finally looking at me. "My brand is our income. And besides, it's not like I'm telling him the really bad stuff. I'm protecting you. You should be glad I'm so good at spinning your flaws into something likable." That was the trap. She made me feel like my desire for privacy was actually a form of insecurity or toxic masculinity. She framed her betrayal as a service. I started to feel like a character in a sitcom that I hadn't signed up for. Every time I told her something in confidence, a fear about my job, a frustration with my parents, I'd find myself checking her Instagram an hour later to see if it had been turned into a thought-provoking caption. I began to withdraw. I stopped telling her the deep things. I stopped showing her my vulnerabilities. I realized that any piece of myself I gave to Chloe was likely to end up on a digital billboard. Our intimacy was being strip-mined for likes, and our marriage was becoming a performance. But the true scale of the betrayal didn't hit me until the winter of 2025. Chloe had started a new job as a marketing director for a high-end tech firm. She was desperate to fit in with the cool, transparent office culture. I on the other hand, was dealing with a deeply personal issue. Since my late 20s, I've struggled with a specific physical complex, a minor but noticeable skin condition on my back that flares up during stress. It's something I've always been incredibly self-conscious about. I don't go to public pools. I don't take my shirt off at the beach. Only Chloe knew the extent of it. Only Chloe had seen me at my most vulnerable, applying the creams and dealing with the shame. She had promised me, years ago, that this was our secret. She told me she loved me exactly as I was, and that my body was a temple that only we were allowed to worship in. I believed her. I trusted her with the one part of me I hated. In December, Chloe's firm held their annual holiday gala. It was a lavish affair, black tie, open bar, and a high-energy atmosphere. I felt out of place, as usual, but I wanted to support her. I put on my best suit, made sure my collar was high enough to cover any potential flare-up, and prepared to be the supportive husband for the night. We were standing in a circle with several of Chloe's senior colleagues and their partners. The drinks were flowing, and the conversation was loud and boisterous. I was doing my best to play the part, nodding along to stories about market disruption and synergy. Then, a man named Simon, a loud, self-important VP, clapped me on the shoulder. He was clearly several drinks in, his face flushed and his eyes dancing with a cruel sort of mischief. "So, Leo," Simon shouted, drawing the attention of the entire group. "Chloe tells us you're a bit of a hider. She says you've got a real map of the world going on under that suit." The group went silent for a heartbeat. I felt the blood drain from my face. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. "I'm sorry," I managed to say, my voice sounding thin and far away. "Oh, don't be shy," Simon laughed, nudging his wife. "Chloe was telling us at the department lunch last week about your, let's call it your, leopard print situation. She said you're so embarrassed by it that you won't even let the lights be on. We told her she's a saint for dealing with all that crusty drama. I mean, I'm sure it's fine, but man, I can't imagine having to be your personal pharmacist every night." A few people chuckled. A woman next to Chloe leaned in and whispered, "Honestly, Leo, we think it's so brave of her to be so open about the realities of physical intimacy. It really helped the girls in the office feel better about their own partner's flaws." I didn't look at Simon. I didn't look at the colleagues. I looked at Chloe. She was holding a glass of champagne, a tight, frozen smile on her face. Her eyes were darting around, looking for an exit, but they weren't filled with regret. They were filled with annoyance. Annoyance that the secret had been brought up in front of me, not that she had shared it in the first place. "Simon's just joking, honey," she said, her voice sounding artificial and bright. "He's had a bit too much to drink. He's just exaggerating." "Exaggerating," Simon snorted. "You had pictures, Chloe. You showed us the before and after of that new ointment you bought him. You said it looked like a crime scene back there." The world tilted. The sound of the ballroom, the music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, turned into a dull, underwater roar. Every person in that circle had seen my shame. They had looked at my naked, vulnerable body through the screen of my wife's phone. They had discussed my medical condition over Cobb salads and sparkling water. I wasn't a person to them. I was a case study in Chloe's narrative of the patient, supportive wife. I didn't say a word. I turned around and walked out of the circle. I walked through the crowded ballroom, past the ice sculptures and the velvet curtains, and straight out into the freezing December night. I didn't have my coat. I didn't have a plan. I just walked. Chloe caught up to me at the valet stand, her heels clicking frantically on the pavement. "Leo, stop. You're making a scene. People are watching." I stopped and looked at her. In the harsh glow of the streetlights, she looked like a stranger. "People are watching," I whispered, the rage finally beginning to burn through the shock. "That's your concern, Chloe? That I'm making a scene? You showed them photos. You showed your coworkers photos of my body. You told them things I've never even told my own brother. It was a bonding moment," she cried, her voice rising in defensive panic. The girls were talking about their husbands' health issues, and I just wanted to contribute. It made them like me, Leo. It made me relatable. I didn't think Simon would be such a jerk about it tonight. You didn't think he'd say it to my face, I corrected her. You were perfectly fine with them laughing at me behind my back. You were perfectly fine with me being the office joke as long as it made you relatable. It's just skin, Leo. Don't be so dramatic. It's not like I told them you were a criminal. You told them who I am when I'm most afraid, I said, my voice as cold as the ice on the sidewalk. You took the one thing I trusted you to protect and you used it as social capital. You didn't just break a secret, Chloe. You broke the man. The valet pulled up with our car. I didn't wait for her to get in. I took the keys, got into the driver's seat, and locked the doors. Leo, open the door. We need to talk about this. I looked at her through the window. She was already reaching for her phone, probably preparing to tweet about handling a partner's emotional outburst. The conversation is over, Chloe, I said, and so is the show. I drove away, leaving her standing in the cold. I realized then that I wasn't going home. I couldn't go back to a house where every room was a potential set for her next, relatable, story. I was a forensic accountant. I knew how to follow the trail of a betrayal, and this trail led straight to the exit. I spent that first night in a hotel, staring at the ceiling, feeling exposed as if the walls themselves were made of glass. I realized that Chloe hadn't just shared my secrets, she had stripped me of the right to my own identity. I was no longer Leo, the accountant. I was the husband with the skin condition, a character in a drama I never auditioned for. And as I sat there, I watched my phone light up. The show wasn't over. For Chloe, the season finale was just beginning. The notifications started around 2 a.m. I had silenced my ringer, but the glow of the screen was relentless. Chloe wasn't calling to apologize. She was posting. I opened my laptop to see the carnage. There it was. A black and white photo of her sitting alone on our stairs, looking devastated but brave. The caption read, "Sometimes, despite all the love and support you give, people's own insecurities turn them into strangers." Tonight, a private moment was misunderstood, and instead of grace, I was met with abandonment. Praying for healing. #marriage reality #insecurity is cruel #truth sleepless night. I felt a physical wave of nausea. She was already spinning it. She was casting herself as the long-suffering saint and me as the irrational, insecure husband who had abandoned her in the cold. She didn't mention the photos she'd shared. She didn't mention Simon's cruel jokes. She just painted a broad, blurry stroke of insecurity over my face and invited her 5,000 followers to judge me. The comments were already rolling in. "Stay strong, Chloe. Some men just can't handle a woman who is authentic. He'll come crawling back once he realizes he lost his biggest cheerleader. Ugh, why are men so fragile? Sending you light." I closed the laptop. My hands were shaking. In my job, I deal with numbers, cold, hard facts that don't change based on who is looking at them. But Chloe dealt in perception. She knew that the first person to tell the story usually gets to keep the truth. And she was a professional storyteller. The next few days were a blur of social media warfare. I didn't engage. I didn't post a rebuttal. I didn't change my relationship status. I went to work, kept my head down, and felt the eyes of the world on me. It was irrational, I knew. My co-workers didn't follow Chloe's real marriage blog, but the feeling of being leaked stayed with me. Every time someone laughed in the break room, I wondered if they were talking about my back. Every time a colleague looked at me too long, I wondered if they'd seen the before and after photos. Chloe didn't stop. When she realized I wasn't coming home, the posts became more aggressive. She started vlogging about the loneliness of a one-sided marriage. She posted a photo of the creams she used to apply to my back, with a caption about the things we do for love that are never appreciated. She had taken the most intimate, caring act of our marriage, helping me with a medical issue I was ashamed of, and turned it into a badge of her own martyrdom. She was monetizing my vulnerability while simultaneously punishing me for being hurt by it. On Thursday, I received a call from my mother. She sounded frantic. "Leo, what is going on? Why is Chloe posting about you needing professional help for your anger? She said you went into a dark place and disappeared." "I'm not in a dark place, Mom," I said, rubbing my temples. "I'm in a hotel. I left because she was showing photos of my skin condition to her coworkers at a party." There was a long silence. She did what? "She shared my medical privacy for a laugh at the office, Mom. And when I got upset, she told the world I was the problem." "Oh, Leo," she whispered. "I saw her video this morning. She made it sound like you were having a breakdown. People from our church are calling me to ask if you're okay. She's telling everyone you've lost it." That was the moment I realized I couldn't just wait for this to blow over. Chloe wasn't just oversharing anymore. She was gaslighting an entire community to protect her image. If I stayed silent, the lie would become the permanent record. I called my lawyer. I told him everything, not just about the gala, but about the years of content creation at my expense. "Leo," he said, his voice grave, "in the digital age, privacy is a property right. If she's sharing your medical information and using your likeness to generate income on her blog without your consent, we have grounds for a cease and desist. But more importantly, we need to secure your life." I went back to the house on Friday morning while I knew she was at work. I didn't want a confrontation. I wanted my dignity. I took my clothes, my files, and my father's old watch. But as I was leaving, I saw her office, the spare bedroom she had turned into a studio. The walls were covered in ring lights, tripods, and vision boards. On her desk was a planner. I looked at the entry for the night of the gala. It didn't say, "Gala with Leo." It said, "Content opportunity, the reality of physical flaws in partners. Target, vulnerability, sympathy angle. Prep Simon to bring it up. Engagement boost." My blood turned to ice. She hadn't just accidentally let it slip. She had prepped Simon. She had orchestrated the humiliation at the gala to create a moment of conflict she could then document for her followers. I wasn't just her character. I was her prop. She had planned the destruction of my privacy as a marketing strategy. I didn't destroy her equipment. I didn't leave a nasty note. I took a photo of the planner, walked out, and locked the door behind me. That afternoon, my lawyer sent the letter. We demanded the immediate removal of all posts featuring my likeness or medical information. We notified her that any further mention of my private life would result in a massive lawsuit for defamation and breach of privacy. The response was instant, not from her lawyer, but from her. She sent me a text. "How could you? You're trying to take away my voice. You're trying to silence my truth. Everyone knows you're just doing this because you're a coward. If you send a lawyer after me, I'll tell them everything. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are." I replied with one sentence. "I've seen the planner, Chloe. I know you planned the gala. The show is cancelled." The silence that followed was the first real peace I'd had in years. But I knew it was the eye of the storm. Chloe was a creature of the spotlight, and she wasn't going to go dark without a fight. I moved into a new apartment, one with a doorman and high security. I changed my number. I deleted my social media. I became a ghost. I realized that the only way to win a game with a narcissist is to stop playing. If there's no one to react, there's no content. But Chloe had one last card to play. A week later, a video appeared on a popular drama YouTube channel. The title, "The Truth About Leo, A Wife's Survival Story." In the video, Chloe wasn't crying anymore. She was empowered. She sat in a professionally lit studio and talked for 40 minutes about my controlling nature. She said my demand for privacy was a way to isolate her. She hinted at darker secrets, things she couldn't say, for legal reasons, but her eyes told a story of calculated malice. She was trying to ruin my career. She was trying to make me unhireable in a field where discretion is everything. I sat in my new, quiet living room, watching the view count climb. 10K, 50K, 100K. My life was being picked apart by strangers who didn't know my middle name. They were calling for my firm to fire me. They were calling me a monster. I looked at the photo I'd taken of her planner. I looked at the evidence I'd gathered of her medical privacy breaches. I realized that I had two choices. I could let her burn my life to the ground while I kept my dignity in the shadows, or I could use the one thing Chloe feared more than anything else. The actual, unedited, unfiltered truth. I wasn't going to make a vlog. I wasn't going to live stream my feelings. I was a forensic accountant. I was going to do what I do best. I was going to file an audit on our marriage, and the results were going to be public. In my line of work, we have a saying, numbers don't lie, but people do. When a corporation is caught in a fraud, they don't apologize. They try to drown the truth in a sea of PR and distractions. Chloe was doing the same. She thought that by being the loudest voice on the internet, she could overwrite the reality of who she was. She didn't realize that an accountant doesn't need a megaphone to win a fight. He just needs the receipts. The video Chloe released was the final straw. It had gone viral within 48 hours, fueled by the internet's bottomless appetite for toxic husband narratives. I received an email from the senior partners at my firm. It was polite, but the subtext was clear. Leo, we value your work, but your personal life is becoming a reputational liability. We need this to go away. I was at a crossroads. I could resign and disappear into the shadows, letting Chloe win the narrative. Or, I could perform the most difficult audit of my career. I spent 3 days locked in my apartment, fueled by caffeine and a cold, clinical rage. I didn't record a response video. I didn't cry on camera. Instead, I built a digital dossier. I gathered every text message where she had promised to keep my medical condition secret. I pulled the metadata from her blog posts to prove she was monetizing our private arguments. But the smoking gun was the photo of her planner, the content opportunity entry. I didn't send it to a gossip site. I filed a formal lawsuit for public disclosure of private facts and intentional infliction of emotional distress. And because I knew how Chloe's mind worked, I made sure the filing was a matter of public record, accompanied by a single, professional statement from my lawyer. The statement didn't attack her character. It simply listed the facts. Chloe had pre-arranged the humiliation at the gala for engagement. Chloe had shared protected medical images without consent. Chloe's real marriage brand was a scripted performance based on the deliberate violation of her husband's privacy. The shift in the digital atmosphere was instantaneous. When the fans saw the photo of the planner, the cold, calculated way she had scheduled my humiliation between a hair appointment and a lunch date, the tide turned. The very people who had championed her authenticity felt like they had been conned. They realized they weren't watching a woman sharing her truth, they were watching a predator grooming her prey for clicks. Chloe's real marriage brand didn't just stumble, it imploded. I received one last call from her. She wasn't screaming this time. She sounded small, hollow, and terrified. Leo, please, she sobbed. The sponsors are dropping out. The agency dropped me. People are sending me death threats. You have to tell them it's not true. You have to tell them we're just having a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, Chloe, I said, sitting in the quiet of my new office. It's an audit, and the books don't balance. You spent intimacy you didn't own to buy a fame you didn't deserve. Now, the debt is due. I'll delete everything. She pleaded. I'll never post about you again. Just drop the suit, please. You're ruining my life. No, Chloe, I replied. You ruined your life when you decided that our marriage was a prop. I'm just the one documenting the bankruptcy. I hung up. I didn't feel a sense of triumph. I just felt a profound sense of closure. The lawsuit eventually settled out of court. Chloe had to issue a formal retraction and pay a significant settlement, which I donated to a charity focused on digital privacy and medical ethics. She lost her brand, her followers, and the cool job at the tech firm. Last I heard, she moved back to her hometown, her digital footprint a permanent warning to anyone who might consider trusting her with a secret. As for me, I kept my job. My partners respected the way I handled the audit of my own life. They saw that even under the most extreme pressure, I remained a man of facts and discretion. A year later, I met a woman named Maya. She's a librarian, a woman who spent her life around stories, but understood that the best ones are the ones you keep for yourself. On our first date, she asked me why I didn't have any social media. I'm a forensic accountant, I told her with a smile. I deal with secrets for a living. I've learned that some things lose their value the moment you share them with the world. We've been together for 6 months now. There are no photos of us on Instagram. No vlogs about our disagreements. No relatable posts about our life together. When we close the front door, the world stays outside. Our marriage isn't content. It's not a brand. It's not an engagement opportunity. It's just ours. The leopard print on my back has flared up a few times from the stress of the last year. But now, when Maya helps me with the cream, she doesn't reach for her phone. She just reaches for my hand. The silence is finally safe. And the show is over for good. Wow, that was something, wasn't it? I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm still processing some parts, so let's talk about it in the comments. I'll be down there waiting for your thoughts. Don't forget to like and share if you had a good time with me. See you in the next one.